Hi Nombaya, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm very happy to be with you this morning.
Hi Jeanette, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so it's a sunny day. How are you doing and how are you coping with life on lockdown?
I'm doing pretty fine today. So today's a nice one, and I think I'm feeling pretty good regarding the lockdown. I guess I won't say I'm lucky, but things are doing fine. I'm stuck at home. I have a couple of projects I'm working on independently. I have a bit of time to focus on things I'm interested in, be it I don't know, something I want to read or a TV series I want to watch. So I think it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, cool. So tell us a bit about you, your childhood, where did you grow up, and how would you describe your 20-year-old self?
Okay, nice. So I'm originally from Ivory Coast. So I was born, grew up, studied, and start working in Ivory Coast. I would say if I have to talk about my childhood, I think a couple of things have been quite important in my childhood. First, obviously, the fact that most of our childhoods are heavily influenced by our parents or our family. And both of my parents were educators, and I would say every 3 to 5 years we have to relocate because they were sent to work somewhere else. So this was a big part of my childhood, moving, I won't say constantly, but regularly. And I really enjoyed that because it allowed me to see my country over many different angles. I've been in many cities, in many regions of my country. My country is extremely, I would say, multicultural. We have many ethnicities. And for me, as a child, it was nice to just go around, discover things, have new friends and things like this. So I would say, yeah, going around was a big part of my childhood. It also affected the second thing I believe that would describe my childhood was a bit of like curiosity because I was every 3 to 5 years getting in a new place. So I have to discover a new place, meet new people, make new friends, and also I want to discover the culture. At that time, I'm not thinking about culture, but it's just that there are things that happen, and I just noticed them. And as I grew up, I say, okay, that's interesting. So in the north of the country, this is how they do things. Okay, and then in the center, this is how they do things. So with the hindsight, looking back at it, I'm able to say, okay, this is how they do things there. So this was interesting to me, just being able to be in some place and mentally go through the things you have to do when you are in a new place, right? So you have to adapt yourself and just try to fit in the new environment. And I would say finally about the childhood was a bit of freedom because we were mostly living in kind of villages, not huge cities. So we had huge space to do everything. Just take your bike and you go out for minutes or hours to just explore wherever you want, wherever. If you just want to go out and play football, you can do that. So you had a bit of freedom. You didn't care much about insecurity. You didn't have any problems of security in that village. So I would say, yeah, to resume, my childhood was a mix of discovering new places, discovering new people, and just enjoying my life as a child, right? So having fun.
Yeah. Cool. I think that's very interesting what you say about Ivory Coast, because coming from Ivory Coast as well, I think that we are not very aware of the diversity of the country because most of us, I believe that we don't get the chance to travel within the country. So that's cool. So second question. So you INSEAD alumnus, right? So why did you decide to take an MBA, or who made you consider an MBA program?
So two questions, why and who. So why, when I was still, I studied at a university in Ivory Coast called INPHB, and especially at the business school there, local business school called ESCA, École Supérieure de Commerce Abidjan. And while I was there, I had a chance to read profile of quite some successful people in the country. Some of them did some MBAs, some of them were active locally or internationally. So I believe this is something that just got planted in my mind somewhere. I didn't thought that much about it, but it was just in the background of my mind. And as I grew up and I graduated, and I thought that I wanted to do something related to investing and finance. At that time, I didn't thought that much about what I was going to do. I just thought that at some point I need to do that, and I started working in financial audit. And then at that time, I believe, okay, at some point I need to go elsewhere, get a very nice degree from a globally recognized school, because I believe at some point I want to have a global career. And even for my university is quite well known locally. I believe outside of my country or the region, there's not much that's known about it. So to me, that was a kind of one, I won't say criteria or step, I believe at some point I need to go through in my career. So that was the first thing. Secondly was the fact that I started working towards getting this degree. I wanted also to have some international exposure. I had a chance to get it as well. And I believe that at this point of time, yes, I had the level of career I was interested in. I had the international exposure I wanted. So now was the time to be able to go to get an MBA, get this international exposure I want, and then start the transition toward the objective I had in mind initially, to be more exposed to financing of our economy. So at some point in my career, I would like to be involved in things related to financing companies, some specific companies. Allow me not to delve too deep in that objective because it's still in my mind yet. But to me, that was an MBA was was an effective way to get myself on the road toward this objective. So this was the reason why. In terms of who inspired me, so when I start thinking about doing an MBA, I start looking online as everybody does, and I came across many profiles. Obviously, you have Tidjane Thiam, which is a huge character for all young Ivorians.
Yeah.
That was the case. You also have people like Mr. Vincent Leguenou, who is the co-founder of ECP, which is Emerging Capital Partners. I believe the second or the first private equity fund in Africa. I did an MBA at HPS. Tidjane Thiam did this one at INSEAD. And I also have one alumnus of my university in Ivory Coast called Dadie Tayoro, who also co-founded the private equity fund focused on investing in agricultural companies in West Africa. So he did his MBA at Wharton, and we had the time to discuss a lot about all of that, what it meant for him, how it went actually, and how it helped him. So it convinced me in this objective and gave me, I won't say strength, but it helped me realize or convince myself more, if I was in that at some point, that this thing was possible. I mean, it was not that far away. At some point, I'll be able to get there. Okay. It might be difficult, really, but I will be able to get there because people like him were able to go there, and they, at some point, they kind of trust me. They believe I will be able to do so. I thought I was able to do so. I just need now to work and see if we go as planned.
Cool. Speaking about the fact that when you talk with those people, you realize that you were capable of going to the Ivy League schools. Do you think that there is a misconception about people who get into Ivy League business schools such as Wharton, HBS, and all of that? A misconception both about their profile, but also about the social class?
I think there's clearly a misconception about the social status of people. Now, I will speak more broadly, not only Ivy League, because Ivy League is limited to university and business school in the east of the US. So in addition of Ivy League, I would think about all of the top business schools like Stanford, like INSEAD, like LBS, and so on. And I think to me the misconception stem from the fact that there is a huge disproportion of people from nice social status or nice social background who goes in the Ivy League in the US. Because I mean, I'm not a sociologist, but there's the fact that when you have a nice background, you are able somehow to prepare yourself for a better life in the future. I won't delve deeper into that, but that's part of the reason. And because you have this in mind, many people associate the fact that you are wealthy or you are wealthy parents to the fact that you might be able to get there. So that's true, but to some extent, I mean, we are talking about a minority and for this type of people. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the fact that I would say the MBA has a quite pricey price tag. It's quite expensive as an investment into your own education. So when you add to the fact that people have a preconception about some of the universities that are there for extremely elite and wealthy people, and education that costs a lot of money, when they just, I mean, had the two of this point, they say, no, this is not for me. I'm just a regular guy coming from a regular family in a country. Less than 1% of the population outside my continent will be able to point on the map. So it's better that I just think about over opportunities. So I believe this is the main misconception about the profile of people who might be able to get there. If I may add or correct one thing, is that maybe I was a bit too sanguine when I was talking. I would not say that I was thinking that I was capable. I think at some point I believe that I had some chance, because there was a huge part of when I was a candidate, I thought that this was uncertainty. But to be honest, there's a huge part of competition. There are things that you control. You control everything about your story. You control your test scores. You control these kind of things, but you do not control the competition. You don't control what kind of profile from all around the world are going to apply for the same position than you. You do not control how they are going to position themselves. So even if you really think that you are MD material or INSEAD material or so and so, you never know. At least I believe you never know. But you need to think that you have a nice chance to be taken there. And this is the position I was in. I thought that I have a nice chance, but now I had to prove it. I mean, I had to go through the process.
Cool. Back to the financing part of the MBA program. So we know that obviously MBA tuition fees are quite high. Let's be honest. It can be kind of an obstacle for people, especially coming from Africa. So what would be your advice to those African, especially Ivorian, towards the financing part? If, for example, they're afraid, they don't know how to find scholarships and all of that.
Mm-hmm. So the question is about how more or less how to finance an MBA.
Yeah.
And how would that answer change if we are talking from an Ivorian point of view or an African point of view?
Both actually, both actually African and Ivorian perspective.
So to tackle the first part of the question, you have many free ways to finance your education. So I mean, there's a first question that you need to answer first. Do you believe that this investment will make sense for you? So obviously that's the first question. If you went through that and you say, yes, it makes sense for me, now we need to find out how to finance it. And now if we are talking about how to finance it, you have three options. So first, this is debt. So taking a loan in a bank or another financial institution. You then have scholarships, and then you have your own savings. I would say I didn't do some surveys or kind of this, just through reading things online on the website of some business schools. I believe, if my recollections are correct, at least at INSEAD, 1/3 of the students receive a scholarship, and this scholarship amounts to, on average, to 1/8 of the tuition fee.
Okay.
So there's a scholarship.
Yeah.
but they are not. Don't
Yeah.
have. Yeah, it's not like 1/3 of the batch
Yeah.
is going to ride throughout the program. That's not the case. Some of students get full tuition fees or heavily subsidized, like more than half or more than 2 or 3/4. That happens, but to be totally systematic, if you were just to think about the median of average, think about 1/3 of the crew who get that, and they get more or less 1/8. So that's it. This will vary across schools, obviously, because schools have different financial standing, more or less. So that's the first thing. Now, once that is said, we have to look at the debt and then look at the savings. If we were to take those three things to analyze the profile of people that will be thinking about an MBA, the difference that an African will face might be at the level of savings, because you have a differential in terms of life standards, I would say, in our countries compared to the place where you might be going to do your MBA, be it in Europe or be it in the US. That will make that your savings, at least when converted, when adjusted for the standard of life in that place, will not be that high. That's one thing, and that's true. But we need to also know that's also true for other places. In Southeast Asia, that will be the same thing. Probably in India, that will be the same thing. So that's something that we all face. It's not only us, but other people face it as well. So I believe this is, I won't say disadvantage. This is something we need to be aware of, but it's not a limiting factor, because everybody else, I mean, not everybody else, but a huge proportion of people will be facing the same thing. Now, tackling the debt portion, the interesting thing is that the problem people 20 years ago tended to have when they were coming from Africa or coming elsewhere or Southeast Asia was that they couldn't get financing locally, I mean, from the country where they come from. If I Taiwanese, maybe it would be difficult to find a banking or financial institution that would be interesting to lend me, I don't know, X many $1,000 for 7 or 10 years or whatever to go and study abroad. That would have been difficult. That may happen for a couple of institutions, like if you attend the top 10 business school, but at least it will not be that easy. It won't be straightforward. You have to do a bit of hustle to find that. So I believe this is one of the reasons why this idea of it's extremely tough to finance an MBA is still in the mind of many people, because I believe that was the case. Now you have some kind of fintechs or new financial institution that came and actually are able to smooth that process, because if you are admitted in the list of business schools, I believe 25 or 30, top 30, something like this, they assume that you will be able, once you go to that business school, you get the training and the exposure and go up to have an interesting restart of your career. You will have interesting job opportunities, and then you will have a good credit standing. So more or less, they believe you'll be able to repay what they will lend you. So they accept to lend you up to, I believe, the totality of your tuition fee, and sometimes a bit more than that to help you cover your life expenses. And they do so without you giving any guarantor or giving any caution. So that means that someone coming from Katiola, which is my place in Ivory Coast, will be able to apply for that scheme to get the finance to go and do this program. So I mean, if someone is really interested in it, at some point he will know that. But the names are Prodigy Finance. That's the leader in that field. It was created by 2 or 3, I believe, INSEAD MBAs, Africans actually, one or two South Africans and another guy, and they provide this financing scheme to most of the students in many universities and business schools. So that's one scheme that's available for many people. Another one is the something that is quite new. It's a kind of innovation in the financial sphere. It's called income sharing agreements. That's a new way to finance education coming from the USA. It's a bit special, obviously, because it's new and we are really not used to that. It's the thing that the process is that those people will finance your education, but depending on the set of criteria they have, they will identify the career perspective you might have, and they will give you a percentage. So let's say we give you $50,000, and in exchange for a period of time, you'll be paying that percentage of your salary in reimbursement of the loan you got. So that's one option that's out there, and I think that's an option. I mean, people just need to assess and determine if that's good for them or what. But so to summarize, you have the most important option that people usually take. This is the debt, taking out of prodigy finance, or if they have the opportunity, they take directly a loan at the bank in the country where the MBA is located. So if we are talking about INSEAD, and somehow you have a guarantor of someone that will be your caution in Singapore and France, you can take directly a loan at the bank there. That's extremely nice because the rates sometimes are extremely affordable. If that's not the case, it's still okay. You can go and take your loan with Prodigy and just look online. You will see that you have many information regarding that. And the rest will be if you ever are able to get some merit scholarship or some, how do they call it, need-based scholarship, you will use that and do your savings.
Cool. I have another question. We are actually running out of time, so I'm gonna move on very quickly. So it's going to be a question very different from what I said before. I asked before. It's not about the MBA. It's really about Africa. I will say that people assume that, in Africa, people are not curious, they don't read, they don't want to learn their whole life. So how, as an African, would you foster a kind of remain a lifelong student mindset in young Africans in their daily routine? How can we foster, that kind of thinking? Learn, be curious, be a go-getter.
Well, I think I will first start by casting a lot of doubt out of this assumption that African people are not curious or do not read. I don't think that's true, and actually, I mean, if you look at the level of ingenuity many people have on the continents to adapt to the different situations that they have, to me, that's a kind of, I won't say proof, but a derivative of the level of curiosity they might have to be able to learn about the environment and find ways to come up with innovative ways to deal with it. So I don't think that's true at all. Now, if you want to talk about reading or continuous improvement, I think that's one theme that is prevalent now, not only for Africans but for anybody in the workforce, because we all know that the world is changing. I believe every generation say that the world is changing that fast, but we will say also that the world is changing.
I agree too.
And the thing is that the type of the content of our words are changing because you have the technology that's evolving and changing. And for me, this is one reason why it's a bit more important for our generation compared to our parents or our big brother generation to be in a position where we are always learning, to be able to adapt. So that's I would say, if we're talking about the why, that's the why. Now, if we're talking about the how should we do so? We also have the ability we have two options. First, you can do it on your own. So just that you go out there, you identify what you want to learn, and you learn it. I don't think you have many options to help you identify how to do that. I'm not the best placed You have many MOOC, Coursera, digital certificates. That's up to people that just can find it out on their own. And the second option, which I believe is complementary to the first one, and it's even, I would say even better, is just, it's not networking, it's liaising with people that you believe know the things you want to learn. So you reach out to them. Obviously, not everybody will respond. That's just the way it is. People are just busy with their life. But reaching out to people, most of the time, people are nice and people want to help when they can. So let's say you are a marketing specialist, and at some point you want to learn a bit more about finance, or you want to know a bit more about distribution or logistics. You should be able to reach out to someone that knows that, and at least let him know that you did a bit of your homework, right? You just haven't been lazy and just come out with thousands of questions and just have to pass it through for you. Just do a bit of your homework and come towards him saying, okay, this is the plan I have, this is the idea I have, what do you think about it? And we'll tell you, okay, that makes sense, or no, I believe the trend in your sectors is toward this, so I believe you should be learning that, and that. And interesting resources, some interesting resources to learn those points are 1, 2, and 3. So this is something that is extremely powerful because it helps you cut through the noise and go directly toward the most important thing you need to learn. And then you can go out there and find out how you do that through different resources that they will propose to you. So that's one thing. And yeah, I would say that's it.
Okay, cool, thank you. So now we're gonna move on to the game. So here we play a game called Curious. So basically I will give you some question and you have to answer it very quickly within 30 seconds, okay?
Okay.
So one person from history you could take to lunch, who will it be?
So I already spoken about. I already met someone in the past, so I won't think about him. I would say Sundiata Keita. I'm not sure if he'll be happy with meeting with a young guy from the future. I'm not sure how cool he is, but I believe he was an instrumental figure in our history. And I read about him when I was a child, and it was a huge moment in my childhood. So I would be extremely happy to meet with Sundiata Keita. That would be extremely weird, but that would be
Yeah, that's funny because the first time I asked myself this question, I thought that would be cool to meet Mansa Musa, just to ask him, how the Grand Library of Timbuktu worked and how people would go in there to check, the philosophy, the science and all of that. That would be cool. So it's funny that you choose Sundiata Keita. Okay, next question. Best piece of advice you ever got?
It's an advice from my mom. I'm just translating in my mind to make sure that this makes sense for people who hear me in English. She told me that if you should not expect too much from people, more or less. That's the moral of the story. So she told me that if you go out and ask someone for water and the person says no, you can't assume that the person is a bad one or it's not. It's just that this person is not nice.
Yeah.
There's a difference between bad and being nice. This person didn't have water. So if you ask and they give you, that's fine. If they didn't, that's fine as well. You should not go out and have some resentment toward this person because that's his or her water. He or she does whatever they want with it. So yeah.
A superpower you wish you had?
Superpower. Transposition. I'm not sure if that's the exact word in English, but in Dragon Ball Z, for example, people were able to do something like this and go directly in another place. Yeah. I like to do that.
Cool.
And if I can carry some luggage, that would be helpful. So I'll just go in holidays like this.
Cool. Well, that's interesting. The biggest risk you have taken so far?
I mean, it's not such a risk. I mean, people take more important decisions than that. But it was in 2015 when I decided to leave my country and to come work in France because I got recruited by a company in France. And it was my very first time to go for, I would say, an indefinite amount of time elsewhere. And I had to sell my car, to leave my family, leave all of my friends, leave all of my social network to come to a new place. When I will have to rebuild myself professionally, to recreate a new social network and enjoy life as well. So this was a risky decision, I would say. But to be honest, I believe people in previous generation have taken much more risky decision.
Okay, what's your pet peeve?
I would say it's one or two things. I mean, not be grateful and also not rewarding efforts. So when I see someone that doesn't reward effort of, let's say, its collaborator or his friends, I can't take it. It's really,
Okay.
I don't like it at all. And it's a bit related to the first one, from the fact that I assume that you need to be grateful when someone helped you, or when you're in a situation where somehow you benefited from someone else, you need to be grateful. And to be really grateful, to show it, to tell that to that person. So those two things are related more or less. But,
okay.
Yeah.
So 2 more questions, and then we're done. Something you will change about Africa?
I mean, it's difficult to talk about Africa. Allow me to talk about my country.
Okay.
Because I know how it's done in my country, I can't talk about the rest of the continent. I will say how we learn or teach history in my country. So I believe it's a shame that many things that at least are part of our history are not known by most of the children or the teachers, and therefore are not transmitted generation to generation. So that goes from anything related to the culture, let's say how the society was organized or used to be organized in some of the different tribes in our country. What's the place of knowledge acquisition in the tribes? At least I came to ask this question to my grandma or to my mother. These kind of things, these are important. This is the way we live in our place, but we don't know that. And even more important things about what's Ivory Coast, how it came to be, what are the main tribes, what's their history. This is not known, and it's a shame that we know these things about Napoleon or Charlemagne and not much of figures of our history.
All right. And the last question, Nambaya Ouattara in 10 years. Well, that's an answer.
I just want to carry on with the project Butterfly Life. I hope I will be a nice husband, a nice father, a nice friend, a nice brother and sister, a nice son. And I'll just take life as it comes. I have my plans, but you never know in life, so just try to adapt, and in the meantime try to be happy with the people you live with. So that's how I try to deal with things.
All right, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.